Explosion! I can't get over that beginning. How you doing? How you doing, Shaun?
Prepare yourself now.
Yeah,
We are
exactly.
fully operational at the AMC theaters. I feel like we should just be on a huge screen like IMAX after that.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant. I'd love that. But hello, everybody. I hope you guys are all doing well in the chat. There are a couple of you in the chat. Good evening and good morning to all of you. Got Bobby in the chat, as always. Hello, Bobby. Patrick's here as well, just saying hi. We have small. This thing comes up. We can't get rid of it. I don't know why this. But I thought Book of Boba Fett episode 3 was crap. But
you know how it could have been fixed if they had a soundtrack by the Jam and the Lambrettas. Because if we went totally Vespa mod, then it would work.
That would have worked, actually. A Town Called Malice would have been a good song to use.
That was a joke that only British people will understand.
Exactly.
Nobody in America ever heard of the Lambrettas.
And who's the Jam? Bobby's saying hello to James. Yeah, James isn't feeling too well, so he's behind the scenes. He probably needs to go to bed, actually, and have a good rest. We've got Patrick just saying hi, James. So James just bring up all the comments where people mention James. This is what happens. Danzig 1979 saying good evening all. Good evening to you as well, Dan. Patrick says hello, Edward. Thank you. And there's Shaun as well. You should say hello.
Nobody wants to say hello to me. Oh, Bobby just.
Hey, Bobby saying hello to Danzig, Edward, and Shaun.
I have to beg. This is all because I was quoting Shakespeare backstage before, so everybody now thinks I'm just full of it, which I am.
Patrick says, "Love show, Jack Reacher. I am 27 age." Well, thank you, thank you for that. Very. You're younger than I think all of us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're jealous of it, Patrick. We're jealous of your youth.
And Bobby Joe Sturman says hello. Just hello. I don't know. Maybe you should put a question mark after that. So what are we watching? Hello. Stay Lifted Productions saying nice to see you guys. Nice to see you commenting as well. And more James. Yes.
Yeah. Stay Lifted is also disappointed that there isn't more James. Which
I think all shows should come with 10% more James.
No, what's JL, Dan? I never heard of that. Is it popular? Is it some kind of Japanese thing? What is it?
I don't know. No idea. I loved watching last week's show. Of course, I was being very sneaky and in the comments last week. I wasn't on last week because my wife had surgery, so I had to look after my wife. But in the meantime, I was watching, and I was very upset that I couldn't participate. So I was just trying to make you laugh.
You succeeded. You succeeded. Is she
stupid comments?
Is she well?
She's well. She had a surgery on her foot, so she can't. She's hobbling around at the moment, but all is good. We had surgery one after the other, and the same surgeon.
It wasn't on her meniscus, was it?
No, maybe it was on my meniscus. Hers was on her big toe.
Did she have an old football injury too that came back?
No, it's something that a lot of women have. I can't remember what it's called, but it's the
anger towards men. A lot of women have that.
There's a good reason for that as well. It's true.
Yeah. I'm not saying I disagree.
But yeah, it's the big toe. Lots of women have a problem. Mainly, I think it's a lot to do with women's shoes, actually, because they're of course designed by men, and men want to put women through as much pain as they can. So yeah, a lot of women have it apparently, and she was told it was going to be very painful, but she wasn't actually in that much pain, which is good. So yeah, it's not a bunion. I can't remember what it's called. No, it's not a bunion. It's called something else. I know the name in French, which is utterly useless for everyone here. And of course, the name in French is also Latin. So that's enough of that. Anyway, hammer toe or bunion? I really don't know what the terminology is in English. But it's probably a hammer toe. I don't know.
Hammer toe and bunion was the worst Marvel team up issue.
That's something you got to work on.
I was just gonna say that. All right, later, guys.
All right, take care, buddy.
Take care. So just want to go over the running order of the show. We're going to be talking at the beginning a bit about James Gunn, and is James Gunn in trouble? we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we'll talk about Henry Cavill being dicked around. Swamp Thing. Which DC movie should Ben Affleck direct? And will Ant-Man 3 save the MCU? And we'll also talk a little bit about Twilight as well, because there's some exciting news about Twilight. But let's get started with James Gunn. So, is James Gunn in trouble? What do you think, Shaun?
I think for the first year he can say almost anything he wants, and it's not going to hurt him. I think after product starts coming out is when they might have a problem. The dog just saw somebody walk across the street, so I'm sorry if you hear that in the background. The Warner corporate culture seems like it's changing a bit, but he is going to be, it sounds like, shaking up a lot of things and a lot of the way they've done business for a long, long time. And that means there's going to be people below him and maybe even on his level who are not going to be happy about that, because he's going to be taking away stuff that they thought was theirs. And I think especially my guess is going to be consumer products is going to be in there. And, Gunn's going to be more interested in making a good movie, and consumer products is going to be interested in getting as many bed sheets and toys as they can out of every product, out of every picture. So I think that's going to shake things up. I think there's been a lot of, from what I've read, between Dwayne Johnson going to over Gunn's head and the kind of stuff that I think normally goes on there, I think he's going to have his job cut out for him. Now, the other side of that is, no matter what happens, James Gunn is never going to be wondering where his next meal is coming from for the rest of his life. I mean, he's going to come out of it financially well, and probably is going to be a bunch of people who want him to make movies for them, if he got fired tomorrow. So, how much trouble is he really going to be in?
Well, this is the thing, because a bit of context, it's more to do with what he was reported to have said during the press conference with journalists in Hollywood. In LA, they had a press conference, and apparently he was basically talking about how the previous regime at DC Films were kind of dropping the ball. And it's got a lot to do with what he said about Henry Cavill as well, saying that Henry Cavill was being dicked around by DC executives, and he was never fired, he was just never rehired. And that apparently annoyed quite a lot of executives at Warner Brothers, which they were actively involved in a lot of these projects. There are still quite a few producers that were producing the movies that came before and will be producing some of them. Charles Roven is probably one of them. I'm pretty sure he's the one of the executives that was getting annoyed with Gunn for what he was saying. He was involved in the Suicide Squad, and he was a producer on Superman as well. So there are a lot of people there's a lot of crossover. Not everybody has left. You have Toby Emmerich that's left. You have Walter Hamada that's gone now as well. Has gone off. They're doing their own thing. But there are still some executives that are there, and I'm pretty sure they won't like to hear the head of the co-CEO of DC Studios say that they were doing a bad job.
Right. There's going to be people in casting. There's going to be people in music. There's going to be people just involved in the day-to-day operations that aren't going to like to hear that. But frankly, it's what they need to hear. I mean, if they want this to be the studio, I mean, the whole studio system is nuts right now. Anyway, to me, the studio system is worse than it's ever been in terms of bloat, and nobody seems interested in fixing that. And some of the stuff that Gunn's talking about is sort of challenging that, right? Because I think he's not interested in making a movie that costs making every movie costing over $100 million. Yeah, and that's going to be scaring a lot of people there, especially those producers you named, because a lot of their overhead, a lot of their money comes from sucking at the teat of projects that they really don't have that much to do with.
Yeah. So it's a lot of bloat, a lot of like Gunn was talking about not wanting to make extortionately expensive superhero movies, which is something that I've wanted to hear for such a long time, because you don't need $200+ million to make a superhero movie. It doesn't make any sense. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was started on what could now would seem today a pretty meager budget. When you look at how much they made Iron Man for. and it seems as though production costs on the DC movies just exploded, with Black Adam being one of the most expensive. Like it's just ridiculous, and the amount of money they of course spent on Justice League in the end. That movie will probably go down as one of the most expensive superhero movies ever if you factor in Zack Snyder, the amount they spent on Zack Snyder's Justice League as well. So he's not wrong, and I mean, of course, James Gunn is always somebody that's going to ruffle a few feathers. He's a new studio head who is a filmmaker. It's quite unusual, especially in Hollywood. It's something that a lot of producers will, I think, will be worried about this actually, because they'll probably see their jobs being in jeopardy.
And I for one am very happy with them being worried. The way they've been running the studios. Have I done the Towering Inferno paradigm before on the show?
Yeah, I've heard you talk about it, but I'm not sure if it was on the show or before. But by all means, talk about it again.
So if anybody knows the movie Towering Inferno, it was a movie. It was made in 1975. Big special effects disaster movie. It cost $15 million. And it cost so much money that no studio wanted to spend that money by themselves. $15 million. So Paramount and 20th Century Fox both had properties that were similar. One had the Tower, one had the Inferno, and they put them together to make the Towering Inferno. And this is a movie that had the stars were, it had a big bunch of Hollywood names, but the big stars were Paul Newman and Steve McQueen, which in that time was like having Tom Cruise and Tom Cruise in a movie together. So $15 million was the cost. Big special effects thing. Now, if you pump that money into an inflation calculator, that movie today would cost $81 million.
Yeah.
And the average studio movie costs $100 million. So what the hell is going on? There was an article in the Hollywood Reporter today about, I don't know if you saw, about the death of the studio comedy, because they cost so little to make. No studio wants to run that kind of money because they think everything needs to cost $100 million, which is just insanity to me. So Gunn's coming in saying, we want to make movies at a reasonable price and we don't want to spend as much money as humanly possible on them. And everybody's like, no, that's not the way we do business anymore. Are you crazy?
But I suppose it's because the more money a movie makes, the more money a movie costs, the more money a lot of producers end up getting. And I'm pretty sure if you look at the budgets of these movies, they're incredibly inflated.
Yep.
The amounts of money that a lot of producers will be getting will be extortionate compared to everyone else that works on the movie.
Right. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say they're also spending a heck of a lot more than they ever did on actors, and but then again, you have to pay talent. You can't not pay them. But I think the amounts of money that like Dwayne The Rock Johnson is making, they all have their own production studios now. Right. Which adds on another amount of money as well.
Well, it adds on another layer of producers because they have people who work for them who are then going to get credited and have to get paid. Plus, they work out prints and advertising, P&A prints, like prints like it's 1955. But they work out what's still called P&A based on the budget of the movie, which means the marketing department's budget could get slashed because of it. So he's really disrupting the way it's been. So yeah, people are going to be mad at him, but are they going to, they're going to ride that horse until they can't anymore, which in Warner's, I'd give them a year.
Yeah.
Before they really start questioning anything.
But that's the thing that I'd be a bit worried about. Like if I was in Gunn's position, I really hope he gets to do this first chapter, because I think it's, to me, looking at what he announced, a lot of it, I was very excited by. I think I mentioned in the comments last week that Swamp Thing is the thing that I was like, when that was announced, I was like, yes.
Yep.
And then hearing that James Mangold might direct it, I was like, yes, this sounds so good. But I'm worried that they're not going to give him much time. I'm worried that the Superman Legacy film that he will probably end up directing, that he's writing, won't do as well as, they'll give it ridiculous projections, and it won't hit those targets, and then they'll say, well, it didn't do as well as we hoped, so we're moving on. There's that will possibly happen, and I think that'll be a really bad thing. And I just hope he gets to do he gets to show at least what these sorts of films can do, and probably shake the Hollywood system up a bit, and then we'll end up getting much more interesting superhero films, because it's kind of it's been stagnant now for quite a long time. And it's about 5 years ago when did the last superhero movie come out that I genuinely loved? It was probably Logan. Was the last one that I really.
Logan,
I liked
Logan.
Yeah,
Logan was like 6 years ago, I think.
6 years ago.
I think Ragnarok was 5 years ago.
Yeah, Ragnarok was one, but then Logan was the first one. The last one that I really. Or maybe I really enjoyed the Batman, to be honest. But Logan was the last one that I came out of the cinema thinking I've actually watched a piece of cinema.
Yeah,
and it's a movie that probably. Martin Scorsese would have come out being like, "Oh, it's not as bad. This genre isn't as bad as I thought it was." Yeah.
Well, he'd have to get off his high horse first.
But he's got a point, though.
As incredibly talented as he is, I do think he's sort of myopic about it.
Yes, but he. I think if you're going to look at like the recent recent kind of era of the superhero movie genre, he does have a point. It's like the last couple of movies that have come out, both from DC and Marvel, have been pretty average and pretty samey.
And pretty by the numbers. Like we have to hit this thing, we have to hit this thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is why, like, when we're talking about, we've seen so much kind of anti-gun rhetoric online, which I really don't understand, but that makes me worried as well.
I get the anti-gun rhetoric because I think it's the Snyder bots out working, because they're nothing they're afraid of more than him actually really succeeding.
I think that's that, yeah, because it means it's the end of the Snyder movies, the Snyderverse.
Well, they're done anyway.
Yes, there was I think it was the whole cult rhetoric of the Snyderverse is so it's just so true. It's like, there are elements to Snyder's movies and Snyder's work that I do love, but there's also let's be honest, these movies are long, relatively boring, and a bit heavy on the religious iconography. So I think it's about time we moved away from that. And I feel like James Gunn is somebody, not only is he a filmmaker and a good one, he's also somebody that understands comic books.
Yep.
And excuse me, as for some reason my Siri's just going mad, and every time I say anything, Siri then comes up and I can't hear anything then. But yeah, he's somebody that understands comic books and has a love of comic books, and I think probably even more so than Kevin Feige in a weird way. And I know this, some people might gawp at that, but I wonder whether Gunn's knowledge of comic books is more expansive than Feige's, and that really excites me, because like Creature Commandos,
yep,
that is such a deep cut. when he announced that. Booster Gold, not so much, but I was a bit like, whoa, like a series based on Booster Gold?
Booster Gold is certainly a deepish cut.
Yeah. I think Creature Commandos is slightly deeper. I only knew about Creature Commandos, I think, because of my brother had like an issue, a Creature Commandos issue from quite a few years ago. And it's very dark, so I thought that's quite interesting.
This Creature Commandos, I remember, I think I maybe read 2 issues, and it was back when DC was desperately trying to save their war titles, because they had a whole office dedicated to that, and they had a bunch of super talented people. I mean, Kubert was the editor of that. Yeah.
So I suppose we move on to the next point, which is the whole comment that James Gunn made about Henry Cavill being dicked around. What did you make of what he had to say about this? Because it factors in quite well with the whole producers talk about it.
How does anybody say anything else but that?
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, because it looked from the outside, it looks like Cavill quit The Witcher because he was going back to Superman and he was clearing his schedule for it. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that's certainly what the optics of it was.
Yeah.
And I don't think Henry Cavill's another guy who doesn't need to worry about where his next meal's coming from. I think, I think projects will find him, but why all this back and forth with the guy about Superman? Why not just yes or no? And I mean, I want to see Gunn's Superman, but I don't know why you change that. I mean, Cavell's is he 39 now?
Yeah, he's getting to 40. Yeah, he's
so they want to have somebody from the future, and just like if you look at what's going on with action movies now and action TV series, somebody who's 50 is not over the hill for that anymore.
No, I mean, look at Tom Cruise. He's still jumping out of airplanes. He's over 50.
Stallone in Tulsa King. I have some problems with the last few episodes of that show, but the one problem I don't have is that this 75-year-old guy can kick the ass of everybody who comes across. We make constant fun of Liam Neeson, but I have no problem believing any. I have problems conceptually with the second two Taken movies, but my problem is never that this guy is dangerous.
I just watching Liam. I'm a massive Liam Neeson nut. I love his action movie era. I love his early work. It's funny saying that. I love Neeson's early work.
I was thinking about Michael Collins the other day, and what a brilliant performance that is, and like him as Michael Collins, and his name's just run out of my head, playing Eamon de Valera, just brilliant casting, and just all that stuff is great. I wish he would go back and do one of those once in a while, do an action movie and then go do something with some substance to it. Has he done anything with any substance since The Gray?
He's going to. So there's a movie that he's in that he shot in Ireland. So that film, and a friend of mine actually saw that film being shot in Ireland when she was in Ireland, and apparently he had all the whole island was just. There were all these classic cars in this little part of Northern Ireland, and they're all his own classic cars, and they're all going to be in this movie. I think this I can't remember the name of that movie, but I think that one might be quite a big one for him. It's like a bit of an independent film, but he has got Marlowe coming out.
Well, let's save that for when James is feeling better, because I know he's jonesing to talk about Marlowe.
Hey, so my name is Philip Marlowe.
Yeah,
I have a particular set of skills. Yes,
and none of those skills involve Conor McGregor.
Freaking leprechaun.
If you guys don't know, Liam Neeson in an interview pretty much went after Conor McGregor, what we call in the United States hammer and tong.
It's such a weird feud. It's like, I never thought I'd see the day and I'd read a headline be like about Liam Neeson and Conor McGregor feuding. And Liam Neeson calling Conor McGregor a leprechaun. I just thought that was hilarious. It's the funniest news story of the month. Oh God. But yeah, he's someone that I'd love to interview, Liam Neeson, because he does not hold back. We know that from that interview he did for another terrible film where he started to go on about trying to kill some black guy during the Troubles.
That was exactly somebody he did something to his sister, right? And McGregor Neeson was out.
Yeah, I think it was his sister was raped. Yeah, and then but the thing is that interview, the story was completely taken out of proportion, kind of out of context, because nobody that doesn't really understand what was going on in Northern Ireland during the times of the Troubles would not understand his mindset at the time.
Right.
So it was. I know the journalist who she's a French journalist who did that interview. And at the time, I was talking to some colleagues, and I was like, I think she should have not done what she did, because I think I was very surprised that they published that interview, because legally, I think they were in a bit of a. It was the Independent, and legally they're in a bit of a dark area. And I'm pretty sure they had a lot of lawyers look at it and be like, can we post this? I'm not sure. I know, honestly, it happened to me when I was at the Express loads of times, but mostly to do with the royal family. But never about an actor like Liam Neeson. But that was...
if you publish an unflattering part of an interview from King Charles, you don't have to worry about him showing up at your next press conference with his huge mitts turned into a fist. You know, I don't think His Majesty is going to actually pop you. And I always have a feeling there's a really good chance Liam Neeson's going to pop somebody at any given moment.
Yeah, I think so. He's a massive guy.
Yeah.
Well, Liam Neeson for Superman. That would have been a shout. But honestly, with this trying to get it back on track, it's completely my fault.
No, it's mine too. Why is this obsession with everybody has to be super young all the time? That's not. If you look back at when they were casting Christopher Reeve, they were looking at Paul Newman. They were looking at Paul Newman. Did I say Paul Newman? Warren Beatty. They were Warren Beatty. They actually
Clint Eastwood, were they?
And Clint Eastwood, yeah. I mean, and those guys were not brand new at the time. I mean, Eastwood they'd all been in the business for 20 or 30 years by that point.
Yeah.
So I don't know that Cavell is going to age out of the part anytime soon. And if he does, that's a story point to me that Superman's been around for a long time. That to me, I jump on top of that and not go with it. I understand their idea that they want somebody young because they want the franchise to last 10 years. But if we look back at what they've done with Superman since 2003, good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit of an odd one because I understand wanting to tell a different story and show a different version of Superman, which I'm actually all for.
Yeah, me too.
And it seems to me as though they're like James Gunn just can't. He feels like he can't just come out and say Henry Cavill's not going to be like he has done, but it's like he basically said Henry Cavill's no longer going to be Superman. But he tried to get around that by saying, well, we've got other parts in mind for him, and he was never actually hired. Was something that he said as well, which is like, why was he going on social media saying, oh, you saw me in Black Adam, there's lots more to come? I feel very, I mean, I don't feel bad for Henry Cavill. He's incredibly successful movie star, incredibly attractive. He got to play Superman a number of times. He's fine.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me that still wants to see Henry Cavill in a genuinely good Superman movie and play the version that he should have played to begin with.
Me too. And I bet the previous folks were hanging that carrot in front of them and saying, if you come back and do the Black Adam cameo, that means we're going to put you into the other things. And then the whole big change came around, and I don't think Gunn felt like he was stuck with it. What other parts could Cavill play in the DC universe? It
would be so disorientating, to be honest. Like if you watch a movie, Henry Cavill turns up and he's not playing Superman, it's going to be a bit weird. I think he's done. I think he's done with the DCU, and he's off doing his Warhammer stuff anyway. And he's a massive fan of Warhammer, and Amazon wants to turn that into a massive franchise. And he's actually going to be a producer on it with his girlfriend, who's also, I did not know this, but she's was the vice president of Legendary Pictures. So that's a power couple for you.
Yeah.
So it's, he's going to be fine. I just thought it was kind of interesting how that someone like Gunn, who is the co-CEO of DC Studios, actually actively came out and said, yeah, the previous leadership really dicked that guy around. I appreciate the honesty, and I quite like this. It's quite interesting to have someone like him, because we're so used to having people that just don't say anything, or someone like Kevin Feige that just doesn't really say anything, does he? He just gives kind of nothing answers.
Yeah. So I like what Danzig just said. Hopefully we can see Henry as Superman in an Elseworlds film. What about What about doing Dark Knight Returns with Michael Keaton as Batman and Henry Cavill as the Superman who's preternaturally young?
Well, that kind of would work as well, because if you read The Dark Knight Returns, Superman definitely looks younger than Batman.
Yep.
And of course he would do. So that would make sense, actually. And that's actually a question that I had, is what do you think they're going to bring Michael Keaton back after The Flash?
I don't see how they can avoid it, but I wonder if this is more of the previous regime's work. That they, they just left a mess. They just walked away from a mess and left. Well, we shot all this footage of Michael Keaton as Batman. What are you going to do with it? We have no idea, but we've got it. I mean, what was the thing that came out last week where Gunn's partner said that he watched Batgirl and like it's not releasable. That's the problem.
Yeah, he said it.
The problem isn't that we don't want to release it; it's that it's not releasable, which is another interesting thing that's probably making waves inside the studio.
That was quite shocking, actually. That it was Peter Safran that said said the film, we would have loved to have released this movie, but the film was it was not releasable in its current state. Which is, to me, I was like, it doesn't put the two directors in a very good light. If that film was really in that way, I felt really bad for them. They're two Belgian directors, Fila and Abdi, I think is their names, and they did Bad Boys for Life, and they actually directed a couple of episodes of Miss Marvel. And I was really looking forward to that movie. Brendan Fraser as I thought that was brilliant casting as Firefly. Yeah, and being able to see Michael Keaton come back as Batman, I was really looking forward to that. And then to hear this, I was like, the movie must have been just a hot mess. I think it must have been terrible. For the current leadership to say that, and these guys seem a bit more open. Yeah, it's not good. It doesn't sound good at all.
But that's shaking up things inside the studio, because there's people who have been working on that in the studio, and there are people who are supposed to oversee things. And I can tell you that people who are supposed to oversee things at Warner Brothers sometimes don't.
Yeah, but I also wonder whether it was a bit of an odd the way that they were the way they were looking at this movie. It's late for me. Was that it was going to be released solely on HBO Max. And something that I heard about the movie was it looked like an episode of The Flash on the CW or Batwoman. And so I wonder whether they approached it more like the way they approach their series, their CW shows, and not their movies.
Yep.
Which is probably why it looked as bad as it did, was because it was actually made on a pretty low budget. It was probably shot for very little. But then again, it had massive stars in it. Like, I suppose Brendan Fraser at the time wasn't an Oscar-nominated actor. And what that was the start of the Brenda Naissance, or whatever they're calling it. But Michael Keaton's a big name.
Michael Keaton does not come cheap.
Exactly, and I'm pretty sure they spent a lot of money trying to convince Keaton to come back to play Batman. Yep. So I suppose he's probably fine.
Actually, I don't know if they did, because when you saw the interview he did with 60 Minutes last year, he talked about putting the cowl on again and going, "Oh, I can do this even better now than I did then." So I mean, he was really sounded excited about playing the character again. Danzig, I don't know what the scale of Batgirl was, but I can tell you positively can do a superhero movie cheap or less expensive, as long as you think about it and you plan ahead of time. And the two big things for me are going to be lighting and costumes. And from what I did see at Batgirl, the costumes did look like a CW show, and those were some bad decisions, I think.
I get the impression that it was just not a very well conceived project, and they kind of went into it not really knowing what they wanted to do with it, and not really knowing what it was going to be like, which kind of universe it was going to be in. Did they want to replicate the kind of Tim Burton style universe, or I think they ended up somewhere in between, and that never really works. And I was upset that it was cancelled, but also. I wonder whether the actors might be kind of happy that this was cancelled if it turned out that it was as bad as people are saying it was.
Yeah, if this had followed The Whale for Fraser.
Yeah. But it often happens.
Yeah. Well,
think they win an Oscar.
Think about the other things that Gunn said about scripts multi-million-dollar movies going into production without a script being ready.
Yeah, which is terrible. Which I'm pretty sure happened with Batgirl.
Right. So they just wind up spending money after money after money, constantly playing catch up on the kind of. Sorry, it's CATCH -UP, not KETCHUP. I heard my own pronunciation and went, "Oh, you've been in Buffalo far too long, young man." You're constantly trying to fix things on the fly while you're shooting, while there's millions of dollars being spent on a daily basis. And Gunn's absolutely right. Lock the damn script before you start the movie. And I bet that's part of what happened here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's happened on most of their films. Although I'm going to be honest, the Snyder stuff, I can't see much in the way of script there. So maybe that wasn't so much of an issue with those movies. But I'm pretty sure with Black Adam, I think that movie went through multiple script changes, and they were changing things on the fly with that film.
Yep.
And it kind of shows when I watched the movie again recently, and I was like, oh God, there's some scripting here that just does not feel right, and some story beats that don't work. And I feel like there's going to be a much tighter feel to the movies that are coming out, to the DC films that are coming out in the future. Already Gunn's got very interesting writers involved in a lot of these projects. Christina Hodgson's she's still around, which I'm like, wow. The movie that she's was attached to she wrote Birds of Prey. She wrote The Flash, one of the iterations of the Flash script. I think actually the one that's going to come out. So I think let's reserve judgment on her until the Flash movie's up. I also think she wrote the Batgirl script, if I'm not mistaken. But then they've also got Tom King, who's a very famous comic book writer. One of my favorites, actually, wrote a very good comic, Mr. Miracle.
Yep.
Which is incredible. And he's done a load of other stuff as well. He's always seems to be always working. Tom King's always doing something. So yeah, I'm interested to see how this all shapes out, because one of the projects I'm really interested in, which I wanted to get your opinions on, was Swamp Thing. So Swamp Thing is a character that I love. And apparently they're looking at getting James Mangold to direct the movie. So what do you make of all of that?
I'm very happy about that, because it's someone who knows the material, but he's not necessarily pinholed as a horror director. There's so much to do with Swamp Thing, either between even some of the original stuff and the Alan Moore stuff. There's so much to dive into, and you can make a good film out of. Plus, it's like we've been talking about, it's not a film that needs to break the bank, really.
No.
I mean, if you look back at the really shitty 80s Swamp Thing movies, where they were actually able to build a dumb suit that looked decent. So
yeah, they were.
Yeah, that's like, I remember being a kid and seeing the pictures from that and going, oh, they're finally going to do a good comic book movie. And then, of course, I was wrong, came out. But the suit looked good.
It did. It did look good. And Swamp Thing's a character that's. I mean, there was the series that came out not so long ago that was produced by James Gunn. Actually, quite interesting, that show. It got cancelled pretty early on. I think it actually got cancelled throughout
in the first season. In the first season,
yeah, yeah. But it was a show that I was actually quite interested in. Out of all those it was one of the shows that was part of that DC Universe streaming platform thing, wasn't it? Which was they've wasted so much money. They made a streaming service. Oh
they made a streaming service in the middle of the biggest superhero boom of all time. Yes. They made a streaming service that couldn't make it. Like how I'm stunned.
That was staggering.
Yeah. How do you screw all this up, and how do you do it so regularly? It's really impressive.
It actually is. Like their ability to screw up. It's like anything. People at
my
Warner
microphone
Brothers
fell. Sorry.
That's all right. But that again, that's that's what was happening constantly at Warner Brothers. But it's just with the DC. Honestly, when I remember that because they released that streaming service, I think it was America or North America only, which made it very hard for us to watch genuinely good shows that were coming out, like Doom Patrol and the Swamp Thing show, which I actually thought was pretty decent. It was just impossible to find them outside of the United States, which I thought was really bizarre.
Dumb, because
yeah,
foreign box office is now 60% of the box office. So if you have television, put it around the world.
I think people in the United States forget that, because you often talk about how well movies are doing. Like, it's always US numbers. And I'm like, that's now a fraction of what you're getting internationally. So it's like a movie like Black Adam makes 200 and something million in its opening weekend. Okay, well, I look at that, I'm like, all right, but what did it do internationally? Didn't do so well. So it's like, I think that's a bigger metric rather than how well did it do in its opening weekend in the United States. Anyway,
and the flip side of that is that they make movies which are not very good, like the Tarzan thing with Skarsgård in it.
Yeah,
and it does really well overseas because Tarzan's still really popular in Europe and oddly in Africa and South America.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
But do they rush a sequel into production? No, because it didn't do well in the States. I mean, it was almost unwatchable for me. So
yeah, I mean, there was one instance. I think it was Terminator Genesis or whatever, because it had a weird spelling of the word Genesis, so I always call it Genesis. They somehow managed to get a Y in the word Genesis, and that film did incredibly well. It was either that one, that film did really well in China and did terribly in the United States, but did incredibly well in China. No one really knew why. Probably because it was somehow managed to be one of the only movies that was released over there. And then that resulted in them greenlighting Terminator Dark Fates, which was supposed to be the big, the James Cameron coming back and producing. This is the first Terminator movie he produced since Terminator 2. And it turned out to be complete and utter dog shit. That movie. I'm a massive Terminator fan, and I watched that. It was so disappointing because I was like, it's the guy that directed this, Tim Miller, the guy that directed the first Deadpool film, which I really do like that first film. And I was like, this is going to be great. James Cameron's back. You've got somehow managed to get Arnold Schwarzenegger back. Absolute crap, that movie, and it did not do well in China. But that was just an instance where a movie does very well overseas. And that's the only reason it gets a sequel. But apart from that, it's always
for a while they were releasing only a limited number of American films in China, and what they were finding, what was going on was that the audience would flock to whatever that movie was. So I think that benefited from that.
It's still happening. It's something that I think it's 24 movies, non-Chinese movies. That's the amount that they get in China every year, but then the revenue is basically split 50-50 with the Chinese government. So you actually end up getting quite, you don't really get as much as you might hope from the Chinese market. But Avatar does very well over there. That's one of the properties that does ridiculously well over there. Yeah, but I mean, I'm as far as to get back to Swamp Thing, as far as Swamp Thing's concerned, this is the DC project that I am most excited for, and I think James Mangold is a very interesting choice of director. He hasn't signed on, but when the Hollywood Reporter writes an article saying in talks, it generally means that it's pretty much a done deal that he's going to do it. I think he's got a Bob Dylan biopic to do first. He's got Indiana Jones 5 to finish, which is what's that called?
Dial of Destiny.
The Temple of the Dial of the
Oh God, how do I don't even know where that was in my head that it just came out.
The Dial of Destiny. Is it like those old phones that has a dial on it? He's constantly dialing. I don't know, it looks interesting, but I really like James Mangold. But he's got that, and then he's got the Bob Dylan biopic.
He's shooting the Dylan movie now, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's pretty much done with Indiana Jones 5. That's coming out this year, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that's like in post-production. He's probably overseeing post as we speak, and then shooting the Bob Dylan movie, and then because I think this Swamp Thing film is supposed to come out in like 2025. I think is what they said, if I'm not mistaken. This is the film that is really intriguing to me if they let them make this, because they could take a leaf out of one of the studio that I seem to talk about all the time on this show is Blumhouse.
Yep.
If they look at the way they make their horror movies, they make them on very small budgets, literally constrain everything and keep one of the things about Blumhouse that's very interesting is they keep everything in house. So it means that they keep the numbers down, that the money is, they don't spend much money on these films at all. So if they look at that, they could have a real winner on their hands, I think.
Blumhouse and Monkey Paw too. Monkey Paw is not throwing money at stuff left and right, and they turn out stuff that's great because they concentrate on the story and the characters, and they have that nailed, so that the rest of the stuff is secondary. It's not about visual effects, and it's certainly not anymore, right? No. So if they go to even the early Len Wein Wrights and stuff, or especially the first few issues of the Alan Moore run, I think there's a lot of great stuff to mine for that. I know it'll piss Alan Moore off, but frankly, what doesn't piss him off?
He's just like, I don't know where he lives in the UK, but I imagine him in some kind of rundown cottage somewhere in a moor somewhere, because he's Alan Moore. Of course, he lives in a moor. Just go, I don't like the fact that they keep on making movies based on my comic books. They don't get the way I write is all crap. He's just so, I imagine him just constantly drunk as well. I mean, this is just I don't know the guy at all, but this is just an idea of Alan Moore, that this is how I think he acts. Well, nobody really understands Watchmen.
Yeah, I love the fact that he constantly derides his previous work. And says, but he's willing to go and sell a masterclass where Alan Moore teaches storytelling.
Yes. I need to look that. I looked at the Neil Gaiman one, and this is the thing about writers.
The Neil Gaiman one just swipes all the stuff from the Alan Moore one.
Yes, Neil Gaiman is a more palatable version of Alan Moore.
Right.
He is.
Neil Gaiman's an Alan Moore you can have lunch with.
Yeah, and Neil Gaiman is, I love the guy. I think he's brilliant, and I can listen to him for hours. He's got one of the most interesting voices ever. So I'm not sure where he comes from, up north somewhere, but he's got a very, very interesting lilt, and he talks about fantasy and about worlds he's created, and he can go on about Sandman for hours, send you to sleep. I think I actually have been sent to sleep listening to an audiobook, one of Neil Gaiman's audiobooks that he reads. And he also reads all of his own audiobooks, of course he does. But yeah, this is a project that I'm very much looking forward to, Swamp Thing, because also one of the things about James Gunn, bringing it back to James Gunn, is this is kind of where he started, making cheap budget horror movies. And I'm really interested to know. Sorry, Danzig saying Alan Moore plays the curse on that Beatles impersonation.
He is a wizard.
Yeah. That was more Beatles than Alan Moore.
Well, where's Moore from?
I must be up north. And this is where I get it completely wrong.
Wikipedia says early life. Oh yeah, Northampton. Yeah,
Northampton. So he's in the Midlands. So it's not really that. It's more. Well, my mum's side of the family is from the Midlands, and I can never get the accent right. It's kind of my grandpa's from Leicester, and he doesn't say Leicester, he says Leicester. So I suppose it'd be a lot of people say it's a bit of an unflattering. But if he won't have a Birmingham accent, but that's probably the most unflattering English British accent you can think of. They don't say but I'm going to upset everybody from Birmingham, but it's unfortunately true. It just sounds a bit sad, the Brummie accent. Birmingham. That's it. Birmingham. You always sound like you got a blocked nose if you're from Birmingham.
And Gaiman is from Portchester, Hampshire.
So so he's from actually down south, but he's got a very, it's just his voice is very interesting. I can listen to his voice for a long time. But he's another comic book writer, very, very good one as well. But was he involved in Swamp Thing ever? Neil Gaiman? No, he wasn't
Biden,
involved in Swamp
no.
Thing. He was involved. He was involved in Constantine, or Constantine, as he calls him, who was first introduced in Swamp Thing. I'm pretty sure
didn't Morrison go on to Swamp Thing? I mean, there's the
yes,
the
it
Ween
was Grant
Wrightson
Morrison.
thing.
Yeah,
And then
So-
there's that weird Nestor Redondo period with the guys on the flying saucers and stuff like that. And then Moore came along.
yeah. So it was Grant Morrison. It was Grant Morrison that did a run on Swamp Thing that I think brought in Constantine, and then that was then made. Then Neil Gaiman then took that and started. I think he started Hellblazer, didn't he? That was one of the runs that he was actively involved with. So that all that all the stuff that James doesn't like, all the magic stuff, all the Lucifer, the John, that's the stuff that I love in the DC universe of comic books. But he does not like that at all.
Now let's not get too excited about Swamp Thing, because remember, Wes Craven was involved in those films, and that was one of the reasons why everybody had big hopes for a Swamp Thing horror movie.
True.
So
that is true. I something about this it's just something about the way that this DC universe is going has me excited, mainly because of where James Gunn comes from, his early stuff. If you want to watch a James Gunn movie that's incredible, you have to watch Sliver. Sliver is a brilliant movie of his. It's one of his first films. It's kind of, if you like Evil Dead 2, I think you'll like Sliver. It's kind of that kind of comedy horror area that I really do love, and that I hope they bring into the DCU. I hope this is like a full-on horror film as well. I hope they don't go down the middle with it, because that would be really upsetting if they do that.
I don't think Gunn's going to be the down the middle guy, and I think that's probably going to be his undoing at that corporation. But I think I think having those two disparate, like, superhero and horror stuff, and then just letting them collide is what makes it work.
Yeah, I agree. One of the other little bits of news that came out this week was that Gunn said that they've been talking a lot to Ben Affleck. So Ben Affleck apparently is done. He's not playing Batman anymore, but he might get to direct a DC movie. So what do you think about that, cranky old fanboy?
I like him as a director. I like him as an actor, and I like him as a director. My many problems with Snyder, very few of them involved casting. So I would like to see Batfleck come back, and I'd like to see him pick a project that I would like to see. We were talking a little bit before about what might be the next batch of stuff to Chapter 2 of DC, and like, what if Affleck took on something like Challengers of the Unknown?
Ooh,
that could be really interesting stuff.
That would be very interesting. Yeah, I never thought about that. I was thinking more kind of. I'm pretty sure he's not going to have anything to do with the Brave and the Bold. Yeah. I think that's, or I'm pretty sure they've already picked a director for that movie. But I was thinking something a bit more mainstream. But that would be interesting, actually.
Yeah, or Secret Six.
Yeah. The Secret Six
from the 60s or something like that. I would love to see something like that done in the DC universe.
That's one thing that I think he might attract Ben Affleck, actually, is something that's a bit more of a period piece, because he tried it with that film that he directed, which I'm blanking on the name now. He directed and starred in a kind of a mobster movie. It wasn't Argo.
Argo was a period piece. And
Argo was a bit of a period piece, but he did. I'm going to have to look this up now, because Ben Affleck did this other movie. Films where he starred in it, and he also directed it, where it Live by Night, that was what it was called.
I've not seen that.
It's interesting. I remember watching it thinking it feels very long, but it's not actually. It's 2 hours and 8 minutes, but he's a lot of it is it's about someone trying to get it. It's a mafia movie. It's a kind of an old school mafia movie. It's based on a book, I think. But he's very good in it. It was the film that he did. I think he directed it whilst he was doing the Batman stuff as well. So it didn't do very well. It kind of bombed. But he definitely has a flair for that sort of thing, and he obviously likes kind of set design and stuff like that as well. He seems to be very much into that. So I think something that's set in the 60s would be quite interesting. Something that's kind of a bit of a period piece.
The Secret Six, to do the Secret Six in the
Yeah.
original original comics. I thought that was a superhero comic when I was a kid. I liked, and I didn't understand why, because it wasn't a real superhero comic.
No, but I think that might be good for him though, because if you watch his movies, it's like The Town is another one that he directed. That's a very good film, and I actually think Ben Affleck is a very charismatic on-screen presence. When he's not at the Grammys, he looks very unhappy. I don't know why, but he's someone that I just can't help. He's very watchable, a bit like Henry Cavill in that sense. They were both very watchable actors. I think Ben Affleck is a different caliber of actor to Cavill. I think he's they're playing in a different league. I think those two actors.
Yeah.
But there's something about like Gone Girl is one of those movies that I watch again and again and again, mainly because of his performance in it. It's like so schlubby and just ugh, but also you kind of can't help but like him. There's something about him that.
The Accountant was a terrible movie, but boy, he was interesting.
But he's good. He's interesting in it. I always think he's always, there's something about him that I find very interesting, and I like his story as well. I think him and Matt Damon have a very American dream type story when it comes to Hollywood. They are kind of very, very good poster boys for Hollywood. In Affleck's case, when he's sober, but
and not waiting for the Dunkin' delivery in Los Angeles.
I love that though. I think that's quite funny about him. But yeah, that's a really good shout. And I'm hoping that let's come back to that like later, further down the line when they eventually do announce what project he'll do. I have a feeling you might be right. It might be something like that, something a bit left field.
He's shown that Gunn's shown that he wants to do deep dives into the material. Yeah. He's not trying to do. They need to protect Superman. I don't think they need to worry about Batman. I mean,
not so much.
I think we could let Batman rest for 10 to 15 years.
They're not going to though.
No, I know they're not going to, but I think we could. I think they need to worry about Superman. They need to worry about Wonder Woman, and they need to worry about how to put the Justice League franchise together. But other than that, I think going for some of the weirder DC properties could make more interesting movies that'll turn a huge profit without you having to break the bank to do them.
Yeah.
Challengers, the Unknown, even dumb shit like Sea Devils, which I brought the Sea Devils back in Aquaman, and everybody told me I was insane, which I probably was. But Metamorpho.
But there's so much to play with I actually feel like there's a bit more to play with DC Comics than there is with Marvel Comics, because I think there was an era of DC Comics where they just went a bit mad.
And there's several eras.
And there's so much stuff there that is you can do a lot of deep cuts and actually create something that could end up being genuinely different in the superhero genre, which is why I think I am very excited about this future, because I feel like that's where they want to go and where Gunn wants to take them. He seems to me like he's this guy that's like, look at this comic, right?
Yeah.
And all these execs are like, what the hell? Why are you showing us sort of like comic book that was published in like the mid 80s that no one's ever heard of? It's like, no, we can make a Hollywood blockbuster out of this.
Yeah. It's like, it's not, he's not walking and going, okay, what are our top selling comic books? Because Batman, what's Batman selling? Like 95,000 copies a month now. He's going back, like, look at, I keep saying Space Cabbie, Tommy Tomorrow, look at the weird stuff like that that's there. And you're right. They have gone mad. They went mad when the superhero thing started to go, and they did all these weird science fiction and Western. Some of the DC Western comics from the 40s and the 50s are pretty damn cool. Some of the science fiction stuff, even the science fiction heroes they did, pretty damn cool. And then in the 70s with the explosion, where they were just like, anybody who has a pencil and can write is in here. There was a lot of interesting material that came out. There's a great book from Tomorrow's about the DC implosion, which is really worth reading because it really shows you how their minds work, and I think how their minds still work.
Ooh, what's that called?
The DC implosion.
The DC implosion.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
I've just finished a book, so I need to get a new one. That might be it. Thank you. Should we?
I'm reading a book about Ealing Studios now, so that's how obscure I am.
Well, Ealing Studios isn't that obscure. I've been to Ealing Studios. Interesting place.
Yeah, it's about Ealing Studios, but it's not about the stars. It's about all the people who work behind the scenes making those movies. So that's how obscure I am.
Cool. I'd like that. That sounds like a good book for my brother. He's very interested in Ealing Studios.
Yeah.
Wanted to work there for a long time. So I suppose we'll move away from DC and very quickly talk about Ant-Man 3. So do you reckon this is going to save the MCU?
No.
Fine, let's move on.
Do I think it'll make a decent profit? Yes. Do I think it'll do anything for the DCU? No. For the MCU? No.
No. I have a feeling it's not going to either.
I think it'll be clever. I think it'll have a couple laughs in it, and then at the end you're going to go. It's going to be like eating donuts. Like you eat the best donut you ever had, and then 5 minutes later you're like, okay, but I need a meal now. Yeah,
and then you're covered in sugar and a bit like, oh, I feel a bit dirty.
Right.
Need to wash my hands. There's a lot of talk because the early reviews have been the embargo's been lifted on is it Twitter reviews or whatever they call them. But I haven't mentioned this. I've been banned from Twitter.
Why?
I don't know why. Apparently, I breached the Twitter rules. I've been permanently suspended from Twitter, which is why.
I see more people on my feed saying I've been banned from Twitter, and I have no idea why.
Yeah, I don't know why. I've put in an appeal, but they don't tell you why. They just say you breached the rules. I'm like, okay, well, tell me what I did, and I'll rectify it. All I do on Twitter is I occasionally make a silly joke about Boris Johnson, but I thought Elon Musk was all about freedom of speech. It seems to me since he took over Twitter, the freedom of speech thing has got out the window.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about freedom of some speech.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I was very shocked by that. I literally opened Twitter one day. I was like, what are these messages coming out? I've got 0 followers and I'm following 0 people, and I can't it's like, you have been permanently banned, permanently suspended from
That's
our
why,
platform.
Because you were following 0 people. You weren't
Exactly.
playing the game.
It's like they're like, stop retweeting James's tweets. We've had it with you doing that and retweeting small screen tweets and being like, look what I've worked on. That's literally all I do on Twitter. I'm so sad on Twitter. I'm like, I'm actually quite proud of being banned. I don't know what for. So please, if you're watching, Elon, please let me know. Well, as I was saying, the early reactions have been released on Twitter. So people that are obviously always have to be very pro. These people in the media that have to be very excited about everything.
Because they want
Brandon Davis.
They want to keep getting access to those press releases that they just
exactly
put on their blogs.
Well, that there are certain people in the industry who will go nameless, who when you're being put on a private jet by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson to be flown to LA to go and watch your movie. I'm pretty sure you're going to give that movie a pretty positive review.
Yeah,
and go on Twitter, be like, it's the most amazing comic book movie ever, which is what this guy said. And that is obviously going to happen. And there are lots of people like that. But a lot of people are saying that Kang the Conqueror is the best MCU villain ever. The hyperbole is incredible. It definitely kind of deafens you. But do you reckon that Jonathan Majors is going to end up being one of the best MCU villains of all time?
I mean, in terms of acting, the guy is awesome.
Yes.
I mean, what little I saw of Kang, I was not crazy impressed, but I think they were just teasing it. So
yeah. And he also said in an interview that was a very the version that we saw in Loki is not the Kang the Conqueror that we're going to see in this Ant-Man movie. There are many different versions of Kang, and that was he had a name, wasn't he? What was the name that they gave Kang in? Is it He Who Remains or something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah. So there are multiple versions of Kang. Finally, because I think you're going to have to leave us in a minute, aren't you?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Twilight, because you have some interesting and exciting news to share. I believe you're an award-winning filmmaker.
Yes, we got an award of merit for best short film at Indie Fest. And we also got an award of merit for best leading actor at Indie Fest.
Wonderful.
And I have not gotten my statues yet, but there are statues on the way. There are statues on the way.
You're going to have to display them proudly behind you. So I think is the trailer up? The Twilight trailer is up. Is that right?
Yes. James said that he put it up, uploaded for when we talk about it.
Okay, so I think James is probably fallen asleep. But where can you find the trailer then? Let's tell everyone where you can find
www.twinight twinight.com.
Brilliant. So you can find it there, and we'll show it probably next week, because James is usually the one that does all of this, and I'm not very good with all of this production stuff.
I'm too old. I'm too old for all this stuff. I still want one of those dials of destiny to make a phone call.
Then that could be that's the whole movie. That's the whole Indiana Jones 5. It's just Harrison Ford trying to work out how to call somebody. Hello, I want my family back.
Now you're doing Liam Neeson as Indiana Jones,
and all my like tough guy impressions just turn into Liam Neeson, or Jason Statham. I can do a bit of Jason Statham. There you go.
My name is Philip Marlowe. No, I went a little Manchester on that.
That was a bit Manchester. You got to go more south, more London, proper London. Yes, my name is Philip Marlowe. So,
I want someone to do a movie about Liam Neeson's life story. I want to know.
That would be an interesting one.
This boxer who got his butt kicked and his father told him to get into something else, and he wound up living with Helen Mirren and becoming a movie star. Okay.
It's a story you don't get anymore, is it? That kind of story is it's a pretty impressive one, honestly. I love Liam Neeson. He can do no wrong in my eyes. I'll always watch anything he's in, even if it is Philip Marlowe, which literally just looks like taken set in the 70s. Is it based set in the 1970s? That movie?
Oh, there was. Do you know about the British Philip Marlowe movie from the 70s?
No. How many of them have there been?
There, the Big Sleep, 78 or 79, with Robert Mitchum. It was sort of a sequel to Farewell, My Lovely, but it was set in London in the 70s and directed by Michael Winner.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God, Michael Winner. Oh, that takes me back.
And it's awful.
Oh dear. Well, it's a Michael Winner film, so he was rather hit and miss. He was very famous in England for doing adverts near the end of his. Yes, he was in a. So, I can't remember what the commercial was. It was he was always. That's how I knew him. And my dad was like, he was a famous film director once. And I was like, oh really?
He directed the first Death Wish.
Yes, yeah. That was the big movie that he did.
Which is a really cheap action movie, and you watch it now, it still makes your blood boil, and it's very manipulative and really clever. It's been ripped off a million times, but then he just seemed like he forgot how to do all that.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he ended up going quite mainstream and made some very bad movies.
Yeah.
After that, and then ended up in the very bad commercials. So, but Michael Winner, he's a name. he's famous for something. He made a very good movie. But that's about it. More than
his
most of
name
us.
his name is an actor. He was registered with British Equity as Derek Deadman.
I did not know that. Oh God, all these. I always learn something talking to you.
when you apparently when you want obscure facts about British film, just call me because I've got all this shit backed up in my head. I can also do British music hall trivia if you want.
We'll save that for next time.
I need to come over and we'll find a pub someplace and play the trivia thing like Detectorists.
Of course, Danzig comes up with it. I was trying to remember what the commercial was, and Danzig said it was Esure. And he goes, "Calm down, dear. It's just a commercial." That's literally his whole line in the commercial.
What's
Michael
Esure?
Winner? Esure. It was it an? I think it was like an insurance thing.
Really?
Yeah. You have to look them up on YouTube. They're quite famous in England.
A UK direct insurer for over 20 years.
Yeah, I don't think they're around anymore. Yeah, but that was what he was doing in the twilight years of his life.
Well, just think, if he was still around, the DC would have been talking to him about directing a Batman film.
There you go. They would have done. Oh dear. Well, thank you very much, Shaun, for joining me on this this just not impromptu, but shorter version of the show than we've done previously. And where can everyone find you and anything to do with Twinight?
Twinight.com, TWIKNIGHT.com, or you can check me on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm Cheapjack Shakes.
Such a good name. Well, thank you very much, guys, for watching, and we'll see you next week. And I'm not going to do the end thing because James isn't here, so I'm just going to end the broadcast. You ain't got no song.
Good talking to you again. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Shaun. Bye.
Bye.